how to live in prevention with violence issues. Yes, we've done all the due diligence that everyone has to do to be prepared to respond to an active shooter. Does anyone remember the Gould Hall incident from about a month ago, 6 weeks ago? And heaven help us, it was on the news. It was, they're flying around in helicopters and there's SWAT guys running everywhere. And those are SWAT guys, most of those were our officers. But a lot of people kind of got unnerved or frightened by that. But I'll tell you why you shouldn't be, and I'll tell you why it's okay. The chance of being involved in an active shooter incident is less than your chance of being struck by lightning. It's less than your chance of dying in this building due to a fire. There's anyone here afraid of being struck by lightning next week or of dying in the building fire here? I'm not, and I'm sure you're probably not. I mean, we look at the statistics and we see that it's incredibly unlikely to happen. Even though that's the case, there are some very simple things we can do to make sure that we keep ourselves and our coworkers and our families and our peers and our classmates safe, and that's really simple. I'm going to talk about the 5 phases of an active shooter and a person who's spinning up to commit a violent act, because the first 4 phases of their behavior are full of opportunities for us to intervene, treat them with simple kindness and respect for human dignity, and be kind to them and get them help, and violent events never occur as a result. The other thing I'm going to talk to you about are some real-world measures that we need to take on a policy level, on a planning level with our coworkers, so that we all have a crystal clear idea of what we're going to do if, and we have some training, because it doesn't matter what we've agreed should happen. Everyone's heard of the fight or flight syndrome, correct? There's a third F that goes along with that is far more likely than the other 2 to occur, and that's freeze. So if we don't train and we don't rehearse just a little bit, we will get into the freeze, and that's where you see people sitting there with their eyes wide and their mouths hanging open and just watch horrible things happen and not move. So by conditioning ourselves just a little bit, we can go a long ways to save ourselves. Here's an example of that. People die in car crashes and in accidents and fires and natural disasters and things. It happens all the time, and it's unfortunate. But in America, you look at the thousands of public schools we have, the millions of children in America that are in public schools, and if we start looking at fire fatalities, how many people, because people die by fire, in fires, house fires, apartment and high-rise fires all the time. How many children have died in America in public schools in fires in the last year? Then we say, well, probably a very low number. Well, the number is so low as to be astonishing. Not a single child has perished in a fire in a public school in the United States of America in over 60 years. That's good numbers. I can live with that. That's where we want to be. So we start looking at, well, how did we achieve this? Well, first of all, buildings are built to fire code, and there's pull stations and alarms, and there's all the different mechanisms for safety. But this, the single biggest mechanism for safety is every 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old knows what to do. If I'm 8 and the fire drill happens, that rocks, because I'm going to be at my favorite piece of playground equipment, which is our rally point, inside of about 60 seconds, right? All the kids get up, they move to the front of the room, they hold hands, the teacher goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, gets her head count, out the door they go, and they're on the playground. And they're disappointed when the fire drill's over, because now we got to go back and do some of that other boring stuff, right? So if we can get such wonderful cooperation and effect from our children, we have to be willing to do the same thing. So I'm going to talk about solutions. And then probably the most important thing we'll do today is I'm simply going to just do question and answer, and we're just going to visit, and I want to hear about your fears, your concerns, what if this, what if that, because some of the most beneficial information we share today or exchange will be what I learned from you and what you learned from me in the Q&A. So let me get through the 5 phases of an active shooter real quick. Number 1, fantasy. In the fantasy phase, the bad guy or the disturbed person or whatever you want to call them, the potential violence purveyor, is fantasizing about them being on television. They're fantasizing about the news coverage. They're fantasizing about striking fear in the hearts of their enemies. They may make boasts or threats to friends and or enemies online, in person, via email, and this is an opportunity when someone's talking about doing it. It doesn't mean they want to do it. And it's actually not illegal to fantasize about doing grossly inappropriate things. They can fantasize about it all day. If they have no plans to implement it, it's not an issue. But it needs to be looked at. Someone needs to be talking to them. We need to have communication. If we respond in the fantasy phase, the net result at the end of the day is 0 casualties. No innocent people got hurt. The second phase is the planning. And this is getting a little more serious because the roommate comes home or the friend or family member comes home and finds a blueprint of the target attack location, school, university, business, whatever. They find blueprints and they find little green army men set around and there's arrows and stay in the list, first this, then this, then this. And so you get someone in the planning phase and it's a little more serious because this is where they're actually manifesting it from fantasy into something I'm going to do. The third phase, but again, if we intervene in the planning phase, we likely can prevent the behavior from ever occurring by getting these people help, working with them, doing the right things by them as a human being. The third phase is equipping, and we've actually intervened in some active shooter threat individuals attending the University of Oklahoma who were in phase 3. They were equipping. In that case, we got that person court committed, and we ended up assisting them to move to the East Coast and live with their family where they were going to have a place to live, a safe place to stay, a insurance program that they could bring them in under that would cover their treatment needs. And this was a PhD candidate at OU. This was a student, graduate student, working on their PhD at OU. So, but the important part was when we got to, because we treated that person with respect and kindness and were genuine. Yes, when we took him into custody, when he showed up to work on the day he was supposedly going to do his deed, there was no one there but people dressed in SWAT gear. And he was afraid. But we searched him and we secured him and then we calmed him. So you're going to be okay. Because once we checked him, he had no weapons, no explosive devices, no stuff. Okay, then this was a false alarm. Well, it wasn't a false alarm. He said he was going to do it. We had to take that seriously. We got back to his apartment, which was about 2 blocks west of here. He had about $30,000 worth of firearms in his apartment. Very little ammunition. His father had been an African big game hunter, and when his father passed, all these weapons were left to him. Most of them were double-barrel rifles and things like that would be not very well suited for an active, but they were firearms nonetheless. But because we were kind to him and we were supportive, it's like, hey, I'm Tim, I'm your maitre d'. I'm going to be helping you through this process today. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to stay with you through every step. We're going to get you to the mental health facility. We're going to do this for you. We're going to do that for you. Would you like to go by your apartment and get some things first? Do you want? And we got there and we said, we're kind of concerned. It's a high dollar value of all this property here. Would you like us to secure this for you? He said, would you guys mind? I said, no, we don't mind. We'll lock it up at headquarters, and that way it's secured. No one can steal it while you're gone, and it safeguards it, and so forth. And he said, no, I would really appreciate it if you guys do that. If we were hostile and adversarial to him, that likely would not happen. We secured all of his weapons, recorded serial numbers, entered them in the property, and later his attorneys were able to sell those all to pay for his legal fees and medical fees and other things that he needed to do to help him. But he didn't need them. He didn't need access to them. So all those right things happened. So we intercepted him in the past the planning phase, in the equipping phase. The next phase is the dry run, the rehearsal. And what's so important about this is the guy at Virginia Tech who did his attack bought 2 complete sets of log chains and padlocks. You remember the old doors on the university and some of the older buildings when you go to leave the door and it's locked? No people can get in, but you can always get out because of fire code, the way the door is designed. So you walk up to the door and there's a bar that sticks out from the door. You push that bar and the door swings open, and when it closes behind you, it locks. You can't get back in. No, that's a fire code type door. We don't use those designs of doors anymore because people can take a chain and slip it behind the bar, pull it over to the other side, run it behind that bar, pull the chain tight, put a padlock in it. Now people can't get in or out. And that's what the guy at Virginia Tech did the day before the attack. All he wanted to know, because what would you think would happen if you went to Dale Hall or the Energy Center and started padlocking the doors shut? What would happen? Somebody would see it and call 911, right? We all know that's a violation of fire code. It's not safe. Who's locking? I mean, it's different if they've got them closed, but there's signage everywhere and right outside the door, or people in hard hats and they've got a backhoe down there digging out something, and all the other entrances and exits are open, but there's signage and it looks legit. That's one thing. But these are just locked doors. he expected someone would call 911, the police would respond, the police would take bolt cutters, cut the padlocks off, and then all he wanted to know was, how long do I have? Do I have 3 minutes? Do I have 7 minutes? How long do I have? And when this is reported, until police get here, because when I attack tomorrow, I just want to know, how long am I going to have? It's going to help me plan, right? 35 minutes later, he dug the keys out of his backpack and went and unlocked the locks and resecured the padlocks and chains back in his book bag for use the next day. Even though he had a second set, he didn't need the second set because the police never came and they never cut the locks off the doors. Anyone care to guess why?
Nobody called.
People walked up, saw it, looked at it, scratched their head, did the Scooby, you know, and then he turned and wandered off through the building and got out a different way. And no one called anybody and said anything. So 35 minutes into this, he shrugs his shoulders and resecures his equipment. His rehearsal is complete, and he knows he's got plenty of time to commit his attack. Plenty of time. We're not talking 3 minutes. We're talking, you know, people are going to get on the phone, call 911, and so there will be no response until he's already started shooting. That's the fourth phase. But even in the rehearsal phase, if we intercept them and we contact them and we talk to them and we do the right things, we can prevent any violence. The last phase is the assault phase. It's the implementation. It's the implementation phase, but it's where they actually are committing the attack. So in that phase, there's very little left to do for police officers to get their AR-15s and put on their helmets and their plate carrier vests, and we push in aggressively and we go through the building as fast as we can, bypassing people. Officer, help, what do we do? We're not going to even stop and talk to them. We're going to be running past them, moving to the sounds of the gunfire. That's what the officers are trained to do. That's in phase 5. In phase 5, how many people are going to be hurt? Don't know. Big question mark. But if we choose to live in appropriate intervention in the first 4 phases, we can live in a society where we never get to phase 5. And that's what our training with OU staff is about. Gone are the days when a student can come in and get mad about a grade and threaten to kill somebody and leave, and everybody looks at each other in an awkward silence and shrugs their shoulders, and then no one says anything to anybody. Has anyone in here heard of TARC or BIT? It's good. Anybody here work or do anything on OU campus much? We started the Threat Assessment Review Committee, I don't know, 8 years ago, and they have done excellent work. But it's the head of personnel, the chief of police, Dr. Will Wayne, Counseling Psychology Clinic, head legal counsel, Dave Annis, head of housing programs, food services, a lot of people, Clark Stroud, people like that. When they come to the table and sit down and convene a committee meeting to talk about a threat, you know, there's about 300 years of professional experience around that table. Problem is, they're all very busy people who are responsible for whole divisions within the university, and they got so busy on their target duties, it's actually the point where they couldn't do their regular jobs. So they stood up a subordinate committee called BIT, and BIT is Behavioral Intervention Team. And they went and got the number 2, the deputy chief of police, the number 2 personnel from legal, from counseling psychology, from housing services, food programs, from student affairs, from all that, number 2 people, and they put them on BIT, and they stood them up in early October, I think, early mid-October of 12, and by January of 13, they were on their 100th case of input to BIT, Behavioral Intervention Team, where people are concerned about what others are doing or saying, or their concerns. Below that is a thing called OU Cares, and OU Cares on the website, if you go look at OU Cares on the website, they handle things all the way down to and including homesickness. So we feel like now between OU Cares and as it links to BIT, and BIT as it links to TARC, we run the whole gamut from my roommate is withdrawing and not participating and we're worried about her, to my roommate has got a gun in his closet and he said tomorrow he's killing everybody in Collins Hall. So we've got that range there. And people, and let me give you an example. I was briefed in on the BIT, just to show how it works. I was briefed in on the BIT report from last year, where a woman who's foreign national, PhD candidate, single parent, has a job. And she sent a message to BIT, and it was, help, I'm drowning. I'm down to 3 hours of sleep a day, and I'm not catching up. Between my children, between my job, between my PhD work, I can't seem to catch up. I need help. And guess what happened? BIT swung in, phone calls are being made, people. So it's not always just about dealing with bad guys. It's about helping remove obstacles to people's success at OU. So BIT's not just this big hammer we run around smacking people in the head with. It's a tool to help people in crisis. So BIT and TARP are excellent resources, and as is OU Cares. And that's important to have programs like that. Because we're spending the time, the money, and the energy to live in prevention. Make sense? So that's the whole program. That's what we've got to do here. That's what we've got to do everywhere else. Now let's talk about nuts and bolts real quick. Let's talk about things that you do to make yourself safe in your workplace. I have a question for you. Who owns this building?
We do.
And when I say we, are you a non-profit?
Yeah, we're a non-profit.
It's not a government agency, it's private property. Okay.
Private property.
Your jurisdiction and your responsible agency is Norman Police Department, right? So if you guys call 911, Norman PD's coming. And do they ever come by? Do you ever have like a beat officer stop in and talk to you? They know where you are? They come through, walk through your facility or anything? That's something that you need to get scheduled to do. Find out what beat you're in.
We are just now getting it scheduled.
Yeah, find out what beat you're in.
We know who he is.
Who he is,
talk to
you
him. It starts with a Z.
Well, Miranda is talking to somebody, they're gonna, there's an email about it, but we're gonna start having a beat officer that,
What you guys ought to do is about once a month, invite them over for lunch. And have them in, ask them to bring another officer with them every time. And just, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but just have them come in and meet and walk around, let them look at the building. The first thing I did when I got here, Des, I walked 360 degrees around your building looking for points of egress. And I realized you can actually get out the windows here, but you need to have the tools, the equipment to break the windows and get out. You've got 3 exits on the north wall, 1 on each, the east and west. You have a question?
No. All that says on afterwards.
Okay. So let's get to the fundamentals. Number 1, and the single most important fundamental is duress code. You guys need to have a means to communicate to other people that you work with that there is a problem. Let me tell you something happened at OU Counseling Clinic. Someone came in, needed to get a piece of paperwork out to give to their counselor, sit down and start to talk, and they're on the edge. This person's got a violent history, and to get the paperwork out, they set their briefcase up on the desk. They open the briefcase, and there's a weapon in the briefcase. And I don't remember if it was a pistol or a Bowie knife or what it was, but they open it up, they get the paperwork out, and they give the paperwork to the counselor, give them a serious look, pause for a moment, then close the briefcase and lock it back up and set it down beside the seat and go on, and let's go on with our interaction. Is that a threat? Well, I don't know. But is it appropriate? Is it a concern? How would you deal with that situation? Well, I'm here today to give you some nuts and bolts to how to deal with that situation. Duress codes are critical. Duress codes should not be code red. Elvis has left the building. The duress code should be have John cancel my afternoon appointments, or have Susan reschedule my meeting for tomorrow morning, or someone whose name who doesn't even work here. Something that everyone will understand instantly as a duress code, but the person sitting in the room who's just done something inappropriate or said something or exposed a weapon or done something won't realize that you're tipping your hand. A second level of notification you can do on something like this, everybody has a phone in their office, right? Does your phone have a volume control on it so you can turn the volume down? You pick up that phone and dial 911 and then turn the volume all the way down. The 911 operator is going to say, Norman 911, what is the address of your emergency? You don't want that coming across your phone. You can say to the person, hey, I take your concerns seriously, and I'm going to do the best I can to address them today, and I don't want our meeting to be interrupted. So I'm going to take my phone off the hook, and we're going to sit in there and hash this out. I don't know who hasn't helped you before, but the only thing I don't know what I can do for, but one thing I guarantee you today is I'm going to do my best to help you today. You're going to be heard when you left here. I'm going to listen to you, and we're going to see what we can resolve. But I'm going to take my phone off the hook because I don't want to be bothered. You pick it up, turn the rocker switch all the way to the volume of 0, 911, leave it there, and then you say, so when we get started today, and I understand you're upset, I understand you're angry, I understand you're not happy with the way things have been going, but I'm going to listen to you. So tell me what's your single biggest complaint? You start to, because guess what's happening? 911 operators taking all this in. They're saying, hello, is there an emergency there? And then no one's answering them. They hear talking in the background. They're going to shut up and listen. They have a gain switch they can turn up and hear what's going on in the room. They are immediately going to dispatch an officer to check an unknown situation. Officers are going to start coming, and they're going to come in gently, probably come in the doors slowly and be contacting people, and we've got a problem, and here's the number, whose extension. And it would behoove you to be passing information openly as if you're talking to the person, but it's giving information to the police. they're not gonna be coming lights and siren. But if all of a sudden in the middle of it, you go, hey, whoa, wait a minute, there's no need, put that knife back up. Put your knife back in your briefcase. There's no need for that here today. I've already told you I'm gonna help you. Put the knife back up. Now, guess what's gonna happen? The deer dispatcher's hearing that, and now all of a sudden, the officers are sprinting in the doorway. The response will be upgraded. You want that open line, okay? So that's another way to summon help. I would tell you, don't be ashamed, embarrassed, don't feel like you have to stay in there with that person. You can say, yes, I'm gonna help you today, but you'll have to excuse me. I had something for lunch that doesn't agree with me, and I'm gonna have to make a bathroom break before we go any further. And just excuse yourself and get up and walk out the door, and then you can be given the dress code to people as you walk down the hall. But you go right out the door. All you need is your cell phone. Ideally, you keep your cell phone and keys to your car on you at all times, but you use a cell phone. Get out, dial 911, do the right things. Let everybody else, if I look at you and I go, code blue, or I mean, you see the look on my face, and I'm saying, have John bring me another pot of coffee, whatever the code word is. You see that and then you see me go right down the hall, right out the front door and go, and don't look back. And as soon as I clear the front door, I take off jogging. That's a clue. And that's what we want to be able to get into, is dress codes are very important. After dress codes, we need to have a rally point. That is a critical thing that we're going to have, so that, because the supervisor, everybody needs to have, it's a supervisor that's responsible for anybody, used to, at OU, a lot of the supervisors in the different departments had a blue folder. They kept it on their desk on the corner. It was always out, and if you open that blue folder, it was a floor plan of the building. It was a list of everyone that worked in the building, to include their cell phone numbers and their emergency contact information and all that information. And if anything happened, a dress code got issued, there was a shot fired, loud bang, or whatever, when that person got up, head out the door, they grabbed that blue folder, they had their cell phone, their keys, and their blue folders, they went out the door, they go to the rally point, and when they get to the rally point, what's the first thing they do? Exactly, roll call. Who are we missing? A lot of times they'd get there, if it run a drill or had a false alarm, and they'd get there, and they had everybody. And that's the very first thing, and meanwhile, someone's on the phone with 911, and they say, hey, roll call complete, tell UPD, we all got out. Everybody that works there is at the rally point. Where's a bad place to have a rally point? Yeah, like 10 feet out the front door. But we laugh, guys. Guess what? Half the departments at OU, guess where their rally points were? It's 15 feet out the front door. That's not we know firearms. If I can look and I can see that guy and I can shoot, and the bullet will go travel that distance and could strike and hurt them, right? So we don't want our rally point to be. It's an excellent idea if the rally point serves dual duty and could be a decent tornado shelter. Where's you guys' tornado shelter? It's in here. Is there another building that's frequently, almost always open during your business hours, that's within a block of here that has a basement?
Don't churches usually have basements?
Think about it. Investigate, research, go talk to them, see what options are available. If you get the weatherman comes on the TV and says, hey folks, this is an F5. If you're not below ground, you're not going to make it. That whole thing that we've experienced, the OU Police Department will have to abandon it. We've got one room that's rated, it's our server room, because what's the most important thing any of us have? Our servers, right? So our computers. So that's rated up to an F3, but that's it. And so we'll have to abandon the police station. If an F5 is bearing down on the south side of Norman, we're leaving. We can't stay there. We're going to have to leave and go to Lloyd Noble Center, where we have no communications and no ability to answer 911. We could just get wiped out. So your rally point for food for thought needs to be a location that could possibly serve a dual duty. It needs to be outside of the range of rifle fire. And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a mile away, but it means from where they are, no matter how they shoot, they can't hit you there. And then you guys have to have a dress code and ability to quickly evacuate and get there. Then last, probably the most important thing, and we've already talked about it, and that's drills. The places on OU campus where they have faculty and staff that have been there 20 years and very low turnover generally do a drill annually. They may do 3 drills the first year, and after that, they've got everybody trained up. They feel like everybody's comfortable that they're performing sharply, precisely, immediately. Then they go back to once a year. Places that have a lot of student helpers, where they have a lot of turnover, and they got 10 different students working there each semester, they do a drill every semester. Because you hire these people, and someone walks up to them and goes, have Bob cancel my afternoon appointments, and the student helpers go, who's Bob? You know, they're all sitting there looking at each other and talking. So we've got to make sure we don't get ourselves into that situation by having clear dress codes. It's part of what's communicated to people when you hire them, and they're involved in drills if you have that kind of turnover. So that's a really important thing. Oh wow, look at time. Time's gone. Let me get any questions I have. Let me run through this list of what we're teaching at OU is called. It's prioritized. There's a thing on the web you can go watch. It's free that Houston did with federal grant. It's called Run, Hide, Fight. That's as simple as I've ever seen it put out. What OU teaches is a 20-minute video, and it's an exceptional program. They get about 3 hours worth of information in 20 minutes, and it is called Get Out, Hide Out, Take 'em Out. And it's a very important. It's about the only 3 things you can do, and it gives you steps on how to each one. I'll be glad to come back someday and show you guys that video. It's 20 minutes. It's cram-packed full of information. I've probably watched it 150 times, and I'm still giving up tidbits of information in it every time I watch it. It's a very full thing. You guys know that your dress code should be something that people don't recognize. Fantasy's the first phase. Rally point. The last phase of the 5 phases of an active shooter is the attack, and they're actually doing it. And we teach get out, hide out, and take out. That's what we teach at OU. Anybody, any questions? We'll wrap up very quickly. Now, anybody that needs to leave or do anything, feel free. My time's up, but I will entertain questions if anybody has something they'd like to discuss. Yes.
One of the things that concern me more than anything is clients bringing in backpacks. All the time we have a lot of backpacks.
You're really in kind of a weird situation.
Yeah, I know.
And let me tell you why. How many active shooters have you ever heard of at Walmart? Every time you go to Walmart and it's half full of people, how many people in there are carrying firearms that you don't know about?
Probably.
At least 6 to 8, maybe as many as 20. More than likely, they're going to be our demographic. They're people that are 40s and older, 50s and older, but they've had a handgun license for 10 years, 15 years, and they're not. It's like me. I've carried a gun daily for 30 years, and I've never shot anybody. So I guess I'm not a threat to anybody, right? So you exist in a place that is outside. It's a no sanity zone. Everywhere that we've said, no one in this box can have the means of self-defense. Where are all the active shooters out there? They're out in those places. I'm sorry, I know it's politically not correct, it's contentious, but the fact remains, there are no active shooters happening at 101st Airborne reunions, fraternal or police conventions, gun shows, farmer functions where there's a lot of farmers and ranchers. It's just, they're not happening in those places. They're happening in places where statutory obligated people be. You guys exist in a place and time right now where no one knows what your policy is here. You're not in a publicly owned building, and whatever your firearms policy is here is whatever it is, and it's the best thing in the world you can do is, in my personal opinion, is don't put a banned gun sign on the door and don't say anything about it. Because you've now left it ambiguous to anyone who's planning attack. I mean, and folks, put this in crystal clear perspective. They could legalize, we could implore our legislatures to, this is a hypothetical now, bear with me. We're gonna decriminalize being an active shooter so that if a person goes to the middle school and kills 15 kids tomorrow, dad may punch them in the nose, they may get sued, but they're not going to jail because it's not illegal because we decriminalized it. Remember, so that's crazy. Bear with me. How many people in this room, if it was legal tomorrow, would engage in the behavior? Not only nobody, but you don't even know anybody who would. I don't know anybody. I know a lot of people, and I don't even know anybody who would. So the law is not what's keeping you or me or you from doing it. It's what's in here. If you look at the number of people that actually commit active shooter events in America each year, and I don't play games with the numbers, because if a carload of Crips shoots at a house full of Bloods, they might call that an active shooter event, but it's not the same thing as someone targeting our children. These are people with no outlet for rage who vent their rage on helpless people and then commit suicide. That's why negotiations isn't part of the option, because their end goal is to commit homicide then suicide. What we have to do is make that unattractive to them, and we have to make the target hard. And I'm telling you, I've told people this, the false alarm that we had at Gould Hall, best thing that ever happened to OU. Because 1 in 40 to 50 million is the number of people in this country who are honestly and intentionally going to endeavor to commit one of these attacks. 1 in 40 million to 1 in 50 million. It's likely that none of us here know anybody that knows anybody that is planning to do this. Now, just because, if they made it legal, we wouldn't do it, right? So the law's doesn't have any effect on me. I'm not gonna do it. I don't care if it's legal, I don't care if it's popular, I'm still not gonna do it. Neither are you. Does the law prevent that 1 in 50 million psycho? Does the law stop that person? So, sometimes you're dealing with a screw and you don't need a hammer. Sometimes you need the right tool for the job. I believe OU is a much safer place now, even though we're a prohibited zone, because everybody saw on television the response, and it looked like Delta Force fast roping out of helicopters to the public. It looked really overt. It looked really aggressive. It looked really over the top. And that 1 in 50 million guy who's sitting somewhere in obscurity that none of us know about, who's actually planning on doing this, just crossed OU off his short list, because he's not in this to commit suicide by cop or engage in a fight. People that do that. They go to a police station and walk in the door blazing, right? And they get what they came for. These people are people that want to vent their rage on helpless people. And that's where that comes from. So by you guys having the policy you have and having what you have, I think you're gonna find it's just not gonna come up, but John Q. Public's gonna assume that this is just like Walmart, this is just like Sam's Club, or just like Costco or whatever, and they're not gonna know what your firearms policy is. If you put a banned gun sign on the door, now they know.
There's one behind you.
Yeah.
We have.
I think that's cell phone.
Yeah.
No, there's one next to the TV that says it.
Oh, okay.
So,
And they're on the
so
wall.
it's, but you guys can put those signs everywhere, but what will that sign do to the guy who's planning on committing suicide after committing homicide? He's not gonna follow it. So, yeah, I'm sorry, you had a question, I'm gonna get out here.
I know this is all probably off the subject of the schools, kiddos. The act of violence, kids on kids. So, do you go into the schools and teach the kids and the,
We don't teach to the public schools because that's Norman PD's job, and they do, and they work with them. We have plans, but the best program. If you guys don't have if you have a niece or a nephew or a grandchild or anybody that you know that you would like to get some basic training on this, YouTube, Run, Hide, Fight, 8-minute video, send them a link to it, let them watch it. That is its closest state-of-the-art training, and it is the brevity of that training is the best in the nation right now for a brief, simple training. Thank you guys for having me here. I'll stick around if any of you have any questions.